Critical Role recaps Season 2, Episode 14. So we started off this episode in the tavern beneath the Evening Nip, the Gentleman's Lair, and we ended last episode with this person rushing up to Molly and calling him Lucian and like, hey, it's been so long, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you kind of thing. And Molly not understanding what's going on. At the beginning of this episode, he immediately 180'd and started acting like he did know this person and he did remember them. So they had a kind of strange exchange, talking about some sort of ritual and how it went wrong and how they thought Molly was dead and that's why they left. But Cree, this person, was so happy to see that he was still alive. It seemed like maybe it had something to do with how Molly got his powers. Additionally, it almost seemed like he was some sort of cult leader or something, because this Cree was like very fervent about being happy to see him and talking about how they would have followed him. So it seemed almost like a cult leader kind of thing. They also spoke to the gentleman for the first time. They finally had a meeting with him. He was just sitting there in the hall, and there were like guards with rifles up on the terraces above them. They sat down and just kind of introduced themselves as the Mighty Nine, which he said, I thought that was who you guys were. I was pretty sure that's who you were. He asked them to offer up some blood for vials so that he could track them down in case they tried to run out on him or turn him in or something like that. He basically forced them to give up their blood so that he would be able to find them in case he ever needed to find them, basically as a form of insurance for himself to keep himself safe and protected. And they kind of started up a relationship, which began with Ford gambling with him, playing a card game and winning. Ford ended up actually winning 300 gold total. The gentleman informed them that both Molly and Bo, their descriptions were out there as being possibly connected with the murder of the High Richter, and he offered to make the investigation go away in exchange for their help. So he sent them on a quest to go clear out like this test lab or something that apparently is haunted. Some sort of undead apparitions are there. It's interrupting the gentleman's operations. They also arranged to have the gentleman and his buddies escort Horace out of town for them, to smuggle him out of town. They parted ways briefly with the gentleman with the agreement that they would return soon to undertake his task. They wanted to first spend some of the money that they had recently got, so they went to Pumat Souls again. I forgot to mention Jester, Laura Bailey, was at home. She wasn't there for tonight's episode. And Ashley is back, and it seems like Ashley is back on a more permanent basis. So we have Yasha back in the story. And Jester was there. Jester was actually autopiloted by like everyone at different points, essentially. Matt autopiloted her for a little bit, and so did some of the other cast members briefly, making jokes about her having like farting all the time and shitting herself and stuff, basically just to kind of nag at, to tease Laura. Laura did actually text into the group at various times to have Jester do some things. Like Jester pulled out her wand of smiling and used it on a giant ogre that was guarding the under tavern beneath the Evening Nip where the Gentleman's Lair is. After they went to Pumat Souls, and they also went to the blacksmith to pick up some throwing knives for Bo. At the Invulnerable Vagrant, Ford finally did buy that cloak that they had been looking at, the Cloak of Protection, which I think just gives AC +1, basically. He got it for, I think it was 800 gold, which he happened to have enough gold to buy it. Molly bought a couple of vials of holy water. Yasha bought 2 healing potions. Caleb bought $100 worth of ink and parchment for his spells in order to scribe over some of his spells that he bought recently into his spell book. After that, they went back to their inn. Jester, once again phoning in from home, cast Circle of Truth when they started to ask Molly about what the situation was, which Circle of Truth prevents you from lying, but doesn't force you to explicitly tell the truth. Like, you can still say, like, I don't want to answer that, or everything you say has to be true, but it doesn't mean you're forced to actually speak about something just because you're asked about it. But they asked the details of what was going on with this Cree person and who he was, basically, because they had, Cree had given 2 different names for him while they were there, Lucian and Nanama, whatever it was. And so they're asking, what was up with that? And he answered honestly, saying he didn't really know. He woke up 2 years ago, buried in the ground, and has since just kind of ignored the fact that he had a past and tried to avoid it at all times because he doesn't care who he was. He's more interested in who he is now. And so that's kind of like more into his backstory. But obviously, that leaves a lot of room for things from his past to come back and catch up to them. And that's why he wanted to tell them, because he was worried that it was now at a point where it was putting them in danger as well as himself. So he felt like he should tell them. Nott also really wanted to quiz Yasha about what the hell was going on, why she was disappearing and reappearing constantly. But the spell wore off by the time they were done talking to Molly, and Yasha didn't seem like she was going to answer anyway. They spent the night, got their rest, and then went back to the Gentleman's Under Tavern, where they brought along Horace and arranged for Horace to be escorted out of town and then set off on their own way to this mission that the gentleman wanted them to undertake. So they went through some secret caverns and took some boats in this underground river towards their destination. And that's where we left off, because Matt, he said that there had been multiple episodes in a row that were over 4 hours, so he was going to keep this one short. And also because Jester Laura wasn't there, he didn't want to get into too much stuff without Laura being there. And so next week should pick up. So this week, there was no combat whatsoever. And the entire episode was almost completely centered around Molly. So yeah, it was just character building and a little bit of setup for next week, where there should be some interesting diving into like this haunted magical laboratory or something with, I assume, like magical traps and weird ghosts and goblins and ghouls and all that. So next week should be a lot more action packed. This week, no combat whatsoever, just character history, backstory, basically. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.